Hello everyone, sorry for the long delay. Um, Here's my video giving my answer to Aaron's question about life advice for when I was in high school, if I was to speak to my high school version of myself. So I would say probably the biggest piece of advice would be the biggest decisions in life are not the ones you tend to focus on with your life plans. Sure, I became a teacher, and that was my sort of my avocation in life, wanting to become a teacher for a long time. But a lot of things that happened since high school, and even then, some of the things that happened from high school are examples of I didn't plan for some of the big decisions that affected the direction of my life. The high school example would be cross country. I did not plan to run. I hated running going into high school, and I ended up running cross country and doing very well at that. Not because I planned to, but because it was something that I wanted. Ended up deciding to do. Originally, I decided to do it because I wanted to do football and I wanted to be in shape for that. But the direction that took me changed. And in fact, because I did cross country and because that became a priority in my high school years into college years, it impacted where I went to college. Um, and a lot of the big decisions in my life since then have been ones that I didn't necessarily plan for. Like grad school, I sort of started grad school or started the process of wanting to be in grad school fairly late. I didn't plan going to grad school at the beginning. But yet, my studies for grad school shaped a lot about my thought process and the way I teach and the way I think about the content. And so a lot of big decisions in my life actually come from things that I didn't plan on doing well in advance. So I know it's been over a month since the last video, so to make things harder on all the other people in 4vacados, I'm going to introduce a second question, and you're going to have to try to answer both of them. So you're not only Aaron's question on life advice, but now I want you guys to explain something in your field that most people think are complex, but in reality is not. It looks more complex than it actually is. And so what I'm going to try to explain is the Electoral College. So to simply explain the Electoral College, first we're going to start with the basics that everyone knows. We don't elect a president based on popular vote. We choose electors to vote for us, right? And so each state gets a certain amount of electors based on Senate representation and House representation. And so what the Founding Fathers envisioned in Federalist 39, is where Madison wrote, and Federalist 68, as Hamilton wrote, was basically this electoral college would represent not two societies, right? Our national society and our separate societies of the states. That's how Madison phrased it: separate and unequal societies of the states, and then the equal society of the population. And both of these things would be taken into account, which is why it's different than a popular vote. That's why you have the segment of electors that come from Senate representation and the segment of electors that come from popular vote representation. Well, popular representation. And so because of that, we have these distinct state communities that allot those electoral votes. Federalist 68, as what Hamilton was saying, was that these electors are to represent the trust of the people. So really the Founding Fathers' ideal electoral college and presidential election is not, oh, you have candidate A and candidate B, and everyone's going to the polls thinking about A and B. What the Founding Fathers actually wanted was you go to the polls and you're voting on maybe a small handful to what your local elector, somewhere in that range, and you're looking at people who are local names. You're looking at people who are in your state that you recognize and that you can trust, right? Think about it. Virginia has 13 electoral votes. Imagine if we had 13 electoral districts, or at the very least, in every congressional district, some people ran for elector, and then there were a couple statewide that ran for those positions. It would be a wholly different presidential election type race if it was actually a bunch of local decision making that resulted in a body of people that were trusted to cast the presidential election decision. And so what would happen is these electors would be chosen, and in the ideal scenario, they would go to the Capitol, cast their vote, and if no one candidate gets 270 electors behind them, then that's where the House goes in, with each state getting one vote in the House. But yeah, with that sort of setup, we kind of don't see today the mechanics of how the Electoral College actually works. People go to the polls and think, In the case of 2016, Trump and Hillary. In the case of 2020, Trump and Biden. And they see it as this binary. In a lot of ways, because of the party machinations, it's fairly binary process. They don't really get to appreciate the role and the trust that goes into the Electoral College because of how it's become very party-oriented and because it's become very focused on the candidates and less so on the chosen, trusted people. And I would say this understanding has, this lack of understanding has spread all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court just gave a unanimous decision allowing states to penalize electors that don't go with the party whims, which under a party-based electoral college system where the parties control everything and you have these candidates representing the parties, kind of makes sense, right? Your people are choosing electors that they trust to vote along their party line because they're voted in a party context. But that's not what the founders envisioned. They envisioned locally oriented decision making, or to state decision making, allowing the state legislatures to decide in many cases, so that people who are trusted in the community could represent their state in deciding the president. And so when you look at it that way, the presidency is not supposed to be the favorite of a national, like, popular decision. It's supposed to be the one that has earned the respect and trust of people who are respected and trusted in their local communities, which I think is something that can be greatly appreciated. Anyway, so your challenge then is not just to answer Aaron's question, but also simplify something that is complex in your field. I hope you all have a good one, and it was good speaking with you.